was early morning, that soft orange light slipping through the thick trees of the Appalachian foothills, like the air itself had a filter on it. Dew still clung to the tips of the grass, catching tiny sparks of sunlight. The ground smelled damp, that mix of fresh earth and quiet decay you only get in late autumn. You could hear a few distant birds and the dry rustle of leaves rolling in the breeze. I was new to wildlife photography. Nothing pro, just a mid-range camera and a tripod. Self-taught, YouTube learned, trial and error type. Every weekend, this forest became my test lab. I liked the stillness here. Everything moved on its own rhythm. I didn't know it then, but something in that calm routine was about to twist, something that didn't belong there. For the last few weeks, I hadn't really talked to anyone. My group chat still buzzed, but I'd muted them all. The notifications popped up, but I just swiped them away. Even typing a reply felt like too much effort, like every message needed extra seconds of thinking. Do I even need to say anything? People noticed, but I kept saying I was busy. Truth was, talking had started to feel exhausting. Silence was easier, predictable, safe. When I adjusted my lens or fixed the tripod angle, my brain just shut off for a bit. Out here, I didn't have to explain anything to anyone. No expectations, no questions. Sometimes when words feel too heavy, silence feels like the only thing that makes sense. And I thought that's what I came out here for. Near the edge of the trail stood a cedar tree covered in moss and old scratches. That's where I saw it. A small trail camera strapped around the trunk. Not that weird. Hunters and researchers use them all the time. But I still walked closer, curious what model it was. The camera was inside a weatherproof case. Looked kinda old but solid. A small red LED blinked on the side. That little recording light that flashes when it's capturing. What threw me off was how dusty it was, like no one had touched it for months. Out of habit, I flipped open the battery latch. Empty. Nothing inside. But that red light kept blinking. Same steady rhythm. No batteries. No wires. No solar panel. I just stood there, trying to figure out how that was possible. It felt like the camera was still working, but for what? And for whom? I stared at it for a while. The lens sat right at eye level. Not too high, not too low, perfectly placed. Whoever mounted it had measured that height on purpose. The casing was sealed tight, but that red light kept pulsing, slow and steady. I figured maybe it had a hidden battery or internal cell, but the design didn't look like it. The forest around me was calm, birds chirping, insects buzzing, just another quiet morning. But the second I stepped closer, something shifted. The birdsong stuttered, then one by one, every background sound faded out. At first, I thought I imagined it, but then the air itself felt heavier, like someone had thrown a blanket over the world. I didn't look away. The camera didn't move, but its dark lens reflected my faint, warped silhouette. That silence wasn't peaceful. It was focused, sharp, like the whole forest was waiting. I thought maybe it was some wildlife trigger, a motion sensor or something, but nothing moved. No wind, no branch sway. It wasn't reacting to nature. It was reacting to me. I sidestepped, moving out of its frame, just to see what would happen. The red light, that had been blinking steady this whole time, suddenly stopped. Dead still. Off. I froze. Maybe it just stopped detecting movement, I thought. But remember, the battery slot was empty. I waited a second. The forest slowly came back to life. Faint wind, distant bird calls. So I tested it again. I stepped back into its line of sight. The red light blinked back on. Same rhythm. Then I moved out again. It shut off. Back and on. It wasn't random. It was responding. Not in a glitchy way, but like it knew I was there. I looked for explanations, a hidden sensor, maybe infrared, a small solar patch, but there was nothing. Smooth casing. No wiring. No source. That moment, something inside me just said it. This camera wasn't recording animals. It was watching me. My breathing got shallow. Not scared, just wired. Everything around me suddenly felt too detailed. The edges of the leaves, the damp smell of the soil, the heaviness in the air. It all felt alive, but not in a comforting way. I couldn't see anyone behind the trees, no movement anywhere, but it felt like something was there, quiet, deliberate. The silence didn't feel like calm anymore. It felt like focus. Like every sound in the forest had stepped aside, just to make space for this one moment. I looked at the lens one last time. My reflection warped on that black glass, and for a split second, I swear it didn't look like me. Something in that reflection felt slightly off, slightly recorded. My body tensed on instinct. I didn't know what it wanted, but I knew I shouldn't stay. Whatever was here wasn't friendly. It was just aware. I started walking back toward the trailhead, slow on purpose. I don't know why, but it felt wrong to rush, like the forest was listening to my footsteps. The trees on both sides stood perfectly still, and the only sound was the soft crunch of leaves under my shoes. I didn't look back. Every instinct wanted to, but something in me said not to face that lens again. When I finally reached my car, the air felt lighter, like pressure lifting off my chest. I packed my camera, finished the rest of the shoot, and drove home. A few days later, while reviewing photos on my laptop, I noticed something strange. One blank slot in the file sequence. No image, no timestamp, just a missing space. The system showed no error, just silence. And every time I scroll past that empty slot, I get the same thought: something did get recorded. It just decided not to show me. It was the start of early winter, and the air had that cold dryness that tightens your skin a little. The suburban neighborhood was quiet. Cars parked in driveways, brown grass on the lawns, and every house glowing with a warm window light as evening settled in. My rental place was simple, a one-floor house with beige carpet and off-white walls. The hallway was narrow, running straight through from the living room to the bedroom. I just moved in 2 days ago. Boxes were still half open, with crumpled newspapers spilling out. The kitchen shelves weren't organized yet. Mugs just sat there. Curtain rods hung loose, and cold air slipped through the window edges. The place was temporary, just somewhere to restart my routine. The rooms felt empty, but there was something oddly relieving about that. The silence was unfamiliar, but manageable. After the breakup, everything just kind of slowed down. Phone calls that used to be part of my daily rhythm. Now I just stare at the screen, watch the name pop up, and hit silent for no reason. Conversations started to feel tiring, like every word carried some hidden explanation I didn't want to give. Text stayed unread, and even before replying I'd think, what's the point? Coffee mugs often sat half full on the counter. Sometimes they went cold, sometimes I just didn't feel like washing them. It wasn't laziness, it was a quiet rhythm that just formed on its own. Silence felt manageable, almost comforting. Each day had the same pattern: laptop, some music, maybe the TV humming in the background. But at night, when everything shut off, the silence in that house got louder. Conversations had started to weigh on me, like their echoes stayed inside. I thought I was adjusting, but maybe I was just avoiding everything. People, and myself. The first night, I walked down that hallway. The overhead light flickered for just a second, barely noticeable, sure enough to brush off. I figured maybe the bulb was loose, or the wiring was old. Stuff like that's pretty normal in rentals. I just tapped the switch, it felt fine. I shrugged it off, probably nothing. The hallway was narrow, lined with closed doors, and a small framed picture hung at the end. The carpet was soft, muffling my steps. When I reached my bedroom door, I glanced back. The light was steady again. Nothing strange, but something in the air felt just a bit heavier after that flicker. I told myself I was just tired. New place, new sounds, maybe overthinking. That tiny blink shouldn't have mattered. But after that, the hallway felt different, like it had noticed me, just for a second, and then went back to pretending it didn't. The next few nights followed the same rhythm. I'd walk through, hit the switch, same thing. The bulb blinked once, quick, like it was synced with my movement. At first, I ignored it. Probably bad wiring, maybe a cheap fixture. But as days went on, a pattern started showing up. If I stood at the kitchen doorway and looked down the hall, the light stayed perfectly still. No flicker, no shadow shift. But the moment I stepped into the hallway frame, blink. Just once, always with my timing, like it knew I was there. At first, I thought it was coincidence. But when it kept happening, every single night, curiosity kicked in. I even tried testing it. Sometimes I'd flip the switch first, wait a few seconds, then walk in. Nothing. But the moment I stepped forward, blink. Then I reversed it, walked in first, turn on the light, blink again. I tried everything. Static charge, loose connection, none of it added up. What really got me, when a friend came by to help unpack, the light didn't flicker for them. Not once. It was just me. Like the hallway recognized me. Gave a little nod each night I passed through. One night, while crossing like usual, I stopped halfway for no reason. My steps froze, and that same light, the one that blinked every time I moved, suddenly went completely still. No flicker, no hum, just silence. I stood there for a few seconds, not moving, and it stayed calm, like the hallway was waiting for me to do something. The air felt heavier, like the space itself was holding its breath. I thought it was just me tripping out, so I took another slow step forward. The bulb gave a faint little pulse, soft, almost like hesitation, perfectly timed with my movement. That's when I froze. A glitch doesn't sync to your heartbeat. It doesn't wait for you. The light wasn't just reacting, it was responding. There was something alive about that rhythm, something subtle but real. I didn't know what I was looking at, an electrical quirk or something else entirely. But after that small flicker, I knew one thing. Something in that hallway knew when I was there. The hallway was completely silent, that kind of quiet where every small sound feels magnified. The heater wasn't running. The fridge hum had stopped. At first, I thought I was just being weird, but the silence wasn't empty. It was aware, like the air itself was holding something. I stood there for a while, and it hit me. The space was observing me, not in a creepy, horror movie way, just aware, like it knew when I stopped, when I shifted my weight, when I breathed. My heartbeat felt louder than it should have, and even that sound seemed to get swallowed up by the air. It wasn't fear, not really, more like a soft, quiet understanding that maybe I wasn't alone and the place knew that I knew. For the first time, I realized silence isn't always the absence of sound. Sometimes it's what presence sounds like. Now when I walk down the hallway at night, my steps slow down automatically, like my body already knows not to rush there. I press the switch, and I can tell exactly when it'll blink, right in sync with my step. Sometimes I even wait for it, like it's become part of my routine. I don't try to fix it anymore. I thought about calling an electrician, but then figured, maybe I shouldn't. Some things don't really need explaining. The light feels like a quiet signal now, soft, familiar. Every night when I pass through, it blinks once like it's acknowledging I came back. The hallway's still the same, still calm, somehow aware. It just waits for me to stop or keep walking. Now when I walk down the hallway at night, my steps slow down automatically, like my body already knows not to rush there. I press the switch, and I can tell exactly when it'll blink, right in sync with my step. Sometimes I even wait for it, like it's become part of my routine. I don't try to fix it anymore. I thought about calling an electrician, but then figured, maybe I shouldn't. Some things don't really need explaining. The light feels like a quiet signal now, soft, familiar. Every night when I pass through, it blinks once like it's acknowledging I came back. The hallway's still the same, still calm, somehow aware. It just waits for me to stop or keep walking. The last few weeks, projects overlapped so much that day, and night basically blended. Even after I shut the laptop, my brain kept running client edits. Unread emails became this constant reminder that rest was a luxury. Notifications went from distracting to flat out irritating. I finally put my phone on silent, checked it once or twice the whole day, tops. Food turned into routine. A mug of coffee in the morning, sometimes a sandwich or cereal at night. Plates stayed stacked in the kitchen, and a half-filled mug just went cold on the table. This Airbnb trip wasn't some planned vacation. It was a spontaneous bailout. I needed a place where nothing felt urgent, where I could empty my head a little. I thought silence would help me think better, but I kind of forgot silence can get super loud too. There was an old landscape painting in the living room. Mountains, a narrow stream, a cloudy sky. The colors were slightly muted, like time had pulled the pigment down into the wood. The wooden frame had tiny corner cracks and faded varnish. Day one, while I was getting settled, it felt like typical Airbnb decor, something owners slap on a wall so the room looks finished. Next morning, I made coffee and sat on the sofa. Sunlight came through the curtains, laying a soft amber glow over everything. But when I looked at the painting, the bottom corner was noticeably darker than the rest. The lamp and the window both threw light straight at it, but somehow that one patch didn't catch it. I figured maybe the frame angle was off or the wall was uneven. I slid the coffee table over and stood right in front of it. Changed my angle, but the dark patch stayed put. After a few seconds, I let it go, chalked it up to a weird reflection. Just a small thing, or at least that's what I told myself. Next morning, same setup. I opened the curtains and sunlight poured into the living room, soft and golden, warming up the walls and making the wood panels look alive. The room carried that faint varnish smell again. I made coffee, set the mug down, and my eyes went straight to the painting. Same thing, a small dark patch in the corner. The rest of the frame and painting looked clear and crisp, but that spot seemed to swallow the light. This time I checked closer. I tilted the painting a bit, nudged it up and down, even slid a finger underneath. Nothing. The wall was smooth, no gap, no damp. The back of the frame felt normal. But when I stepped back, that corner looked even more obvious. By evening, curiosity was kicking in. I turned on the lamp. Warm yellow light fell evenly across the wall, but that patch still looked dull. It wasn't black. It was more like an absence of color, like the light couldn't stick. I told myself it was just angles or uneven varnish. Still, something in me clocked that it never changed. Sunlight or lamplight, didn't matter. The tone stayed the same, like it knew exactly when and how visible to be. I kept sipping coffee and tried to ignore it, but that little, still, off detail kept tugging at my attention every single time. On the third morning, I woke up early. The temperature outside had dropped more, and sunlight hit the wall directly through the window, sharp and pale. The coffee maker clicked on, and my eyes went right to the painting. Something was different. The dark patch looked a little more defined, like the rest of the painting had flattened and that corner had quietly deepened. I got up and moved close. Where the brushstrokes were thin lines everywhere else, that corner had no texture at all, like the paint wasn't on a flat surface, but covering a hollow. I put my palm against that edge of the frame. It felt oddly cold, not normal cold, while the room was warm from the fireplace's fading embers. I stepped back, and for a second it looked like the edge of the shadow shifted, like the light tried to push in and got absorbed. I blinked, and everything looked normal again. But that 1 second got stuck in my head. The patch didn't just look dark anymore. It felt alive, quietly taking in every reflection that landed on it. That thing doesn't really have an explanation. I still don't get it. The whole room sat in this weird stillness that morning. The fireplace had stopped crackling, and I swear even the fridge hum was gone. It was like the walls soaked up the sound. I stood there without moving, and it hit me. The silence wasn't empty. It was focused, like everything in the room was holding its place and watching quietly. Standing in front of the painting, I honestly felt like the wall noticed me. Not hostile, not threatening, just aware. Like it knew how long I'd been staring and that I was about to turn away. I pulled my gaze off it and went back to the coffee table, picked up the mug, but the vibe had shifted. The air was the same, but the pressure felt a little tighter. Nothing physical had changed, but an invisible boundary was there now, between me and that wall. That's when I realized I hadn't come here to relax. I was just a guest, and maybe this room already belonged to something else. That night, when I went to bed, I switched off the lamp and my eyes automatically slid toward that wall. The only light in the room was a soft strip of moonlight, pale and thin, and the painting's corner held the same darkness. Moonlight touched every part of the wall except that patch. It was like there was an invisible border between light and shadow. I told myself it was just my eyes, but the longer I looked, the more solid it felt, like there was depth in there. The fireplace was cold. The room still smelled faintly of varnish, and for a couple seconds it felt like something in that room was breathing, without a sound. At the end of the trip, when I pulled the door shut, I glanced back once. The painting was the same, and the patch was unchanged. Every detail matched, except it felt like the darkness had kept a memory of me. Even now, when an online ad flashes a painting in the same color tones, my heart skips for no good reason.